Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Payman Ascari, and here is my good friend, Jeff Sanders. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm just recovering from shoulder surgery, so I've got my sling on here, but no pain. It's all doing pretty good, I'd say.
That's what that is. I thought that was like a tactical photographer's bag or something.
Yeah. No, I've got to have a sling on for a few months anyways, but yeah, it's going well. I hope you're doing well too, my friend.
No, I'm doing good. No injuries over here. Jeff, you and I we're having a little chat, and I was really impressed and blown away by your level of knowledge of what's going on in BC provincial politics. That's why I asked you to come back on the show. And where I'd like to pick up is you mentioned that you were at a town hall event with one of Kevin Falcon's town hall events, and you asked him a question. Can we start there? Can you explain to us what you asked him and what his response was?
Yeah, for sure. I think what he's probably doing is, at first I thought when I saw the invitation, which I didn't receive, it came through another friend of mine, but I thought maybe he's trying to start going around British Columbia and start trying to capture some of the voters that they lost during the last couple of years, or year and a half, 2 years. And really, I think overall, it was probably just a bit of a rallying cry for the people who are already BC United members to come out and kind of have a safe, fun, maybe not fun, but safe event where they can kind of interact with people that they may not get a chance to do with otherwise. And, it was advertised to ask Kevin anything. And I'm sure that they were prepared for the hot button issues that seem to be going around the province with maybe land title or SOGI curriculum or, the opioid deaths and safe supply, things like that. He seemed to be well prepared for all of those. I wanted to ask him a question that was going to be more challenging and not one that may have had a prepared answer. And so what I did was I tried to illustrate, the polling of BC United went from a solid second place in the province to more or less, once they condemned the trucker convoy by a unanimous vote, and what to me looked like a complete apathetic approach to bills 36 to 44, which were rammed down 2 Novembers ago. And it took like a massage therapist or somebody in the alternative medicine community to create a viral video to freak people out about a bill nobody knew was going to be passed in less than a week. And I was asking, you during this time, you have hemorrhaged conservative voters to the BC Conservative Party. They're not going there because John Rustad, the leader, is a charismatic, populist leader that everybody is able to rally behind because they knew who he was. It's because of how BC United has approached these conservative issues in the province. And if you want to form the next government in BC, you're going to have to win those voters back. So how are you going to do that? Now, he interrupted me politely to say, to try and clarify that they had been messaging that talking point, especially before Bill 36, which is the Healthcare and Occupations Act. I can't recall it off the top of my head, but that's the one where they're taking away a bunch of the colleges and amalgamating them, putting, government people in the positions of leadership there, and a whole bunch of things from the BC Public Health Act, pulling it out of that, rarely never used act and putting it in this bill. It scared a lot of people. And he said that they were messaging. I'm like, well, I didn't see any feeds on your social media or anything to illustrate that this was of concern. But when it came out, through our own threads, through just regular BC people, it created a lot of panic. And again, a lot of your voters ended up moving towards the BC Conservative Party. So his response was that they did message, and they told all of the healthcare professions, or the alternative healthcare professions as well, that they need to message their constituents or their clients and kind of get that ball rolling. And they are the ones that need to be accountable for not making that message or putting it out there before this viral campaign ended up hitting, which he said he was thankful for. And well, he didn't say this specifically. He went into touting some of the, great accomplishments that the BC Liberals did the last time they held power, like creation of new highways and the Portman Bridge and a variety of other things, I think, to illustrate, well, our track record is going to win all those people back. It was a terrible answer. And again, it's probably because he wasn't prepared for it. But what it told me more than anything is that they're just gunning for second place. They're not trying to form government. And after the BC Liberals leadership convention, and, he was one of the candidates I reached out to multiple times so that I could, write comment. By the way, I'm with Epoch Times as a freelance contributor, and, nobody in the party was getting back to me except for one. And my sense back then was they were just trying to preserve what they had. They pulled Kevin Falcon, into the leadership race because I think they saw some of the younger conservatives coming in and gaining steam. They changed the rules to kick out Aaron Gunn from the leadership race. They had, some controversy with one of their one of their candidates as well that was getting some bad press. They just didn't want to lose control of the messaging, even if they figure it would be an outlet that might be friendly to them. And so I got the feeling like what little they had, they needed to preserve then. And after this town hall, it became more clear to me that now that they're in third place in polling in British Columbia, they're desperate to try and retain that more official opposition status as they continue to, plummet in their popularity. So that's kind of what happened there. And it's not like he was rude to me. He did bring up in subsequent questions, he would refer back to me as if I try to, make a point, I think, see, this is the type of thing the media should be asking or something like that, right? I thought he handled, and Billboard Chris was there as well, and he challenged him for sure on the standard things that he's in favor of, and many people are, with, parents' right to know what's going on with their kids at school, preventing them from surgeries or hormonal treatment, until they're of age of consent, 18 years old. And, the party can't commit to that, which tells me that, that's too hot button a topic to risk getting involved with the backlash from the press or others who may not understand the issue fully. So I think they're in free fall, and he was at least trying to rally the troops for those who are loyal to the party and still members, and hope they form the next government.
I'm going to ask you, I always ask my guests this question, and it always makes them feel uncomfortable because it's something nobody wants to speculate on, which is intent, because people like to focus on facts and data and the things that are provable. Right. But so I'm going to take some of the things you said. You mentioned they brought Kevin Falcon back in to sort of solidify the party. You mentioned how they were worried about Aaron Gunn because he was bringing his social media following. So whoever these people who are running the party, what is their goal in life? Like, do they want their pension? Do they not want to run afoul of unions so they keep their funding? Or are they just like 80-year-old, I don't know, old timers that are resistant to change? What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, politics has been changing since, I'm in my 50s now. And so when I first started paying attention was during the 80s. And, you compare the difference in the last 35 years or so, it's quite remarkable. There's a lot of people, we already know this, but, it's not talked about, but there's a lot of people that are faceless that are making decisions that have a lot of influence on what type of policies are made. And, I was talking to a fella who has a greenhouse business, and, he met with the Minister of Agriculture, and behind her was her deputy minister, and there's somebody else he had mentioned. And then behind those two were like 12 people that were just kind of sitting in the background that make all the policy. Now, I don't know what they make, but those 12 people are, there to help craft all the legal framework and the long-term framework for whatever policy is going to be made with agriculture. So, these are an example of, he said a dozen, but I'm not totally sure if that's right. But let's say there's 12 people in just that one ministry that are on, as advisors. They want to keep that job, obviously. There's all kinds of people that work in each portfolio, and there's all kinds of staffers that are there to do research and work in Victoria and beyond. And so when you're in power, you have the largest staff. And of course, as you see politics continue since the 80s, there's far more portfolios that are being generated. And it's in all levels of government. But one of the things that, I sense that is part of rewarding people for being loyal to you. You get a portfolio, you get more money, you get to hire more people. I mean, the government keeps putting more money into other jobs. And, this carries on. We're rewarding loyalty, not expertise or track record typically. And so the people we don't know that are, behind the scenes, there's a lot more of them than there are that we see of the people that we vote. And of course, this is becoming more noticeable in our society as we're looking here in North America, both in Canada and the US, that we're talking about unelected people that are making the decisions that are affecting our lives. And so if you can't break through that barrier of the people that are creating that influence and crafting the policy on whatever taxation or climate control or whatever we're going to be facing in the future, there's only one person that has that authority, which is the minister that's responsible for that portfolio. And even then, there may be influence that's saying like, hey, this is the policy that we're sticking with because, like you say, our demographic that supports us financially from this sector, if we stray from that, we have to answer to them. I mean, there's a video going on around with Joe Biden back when he was elected as a senator. I think he was 35, and he's very candid. He's like, I could do a national campaign. That's why I got elected. But people don't give you $300,000 if they don't want something. There's good reason for that. So money talks, and that has to do a lot with how you craft your policy, whether it's right for the people you represent or not. So I don't want to say I have insider knowledge by being there, but I can say that there's a lot more people that are behind the scenes that want to preserve what's there and the perks that come with it than the people that we're actually seeing when we're at the election booth,
So am I correct to understand that essentially you have 12 people that captured the BC United Party and shot itself in the foot by ousting Aaron Gunn, who probably would have brought thousands of voters?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I haven't talked to Aaron about that. This is just me trying to put the pieces together because I got to remember what it was, but they claimed that he said something that was homophobic or something along those lines. And so they had to find a way to spin their rules to say that this was worthy of him being an illegitimate candidate or a reason to be let go. The fear might have been that he had enough followers on his social media accounts that he could say, hey, get a BC Liberals membership and vote for me in the provincial election for leader. But there were also younger people like Aaron. There was Gavin Dew, Val Litwin. These were two people that weren't MLAs, but they were younger, and they were bringing a different sort of social, progressive, but conservative approach to politics. And I don't know how well they were polling, but they were certainly working hard. The big one would have been probably Aaron Gunn, but it seemed to me, again, just by evaluating what I was witnessing, is that they needed to, the people that are behind the scenes that you alluded to, they want to preserve the old guard. And even if, that meant just being in second place for the end of time, at least they can still count on having a job and doing what they're doing, getting their stipends for this and their discounts for that. And, it's just a sense of security. Kevin Falcon said he said at the town hall that he got back into it because of his two girls. He's got two daughters that are in the BC education system. I mean, he came in not at the start. He came in partway through the leadership race. So I'm not sure that that's the case. I feel he was enticed to come back into BC politics. And he's got experience. He's got political savvy. He's good with a microphone. He knows how to talk to the media the times that he will, which didn't include talking to me. But, he could be a good premier from that standpoint. But I think he realizes that he's not trying to get to that point. He's just trying to preserve what they have right now. This is how I've just sort of assumed or put the pieces together to make it seem like it all made sense to me.
Why don't we talk about incentive? By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this. The reason I'm asking you these questions as if I'm deposing you is because you have such a wealth of knowledge, and the majority of British Columbians, they just don't have this insight. So I think it'll be hugely beneficial. So thank you beforehand. Yeah. I guess going back to my question, what is the incentive for Kevin Falcon? Like, is he getting a salary at the moment? Is he?
Oh, for sure.
Is there a pen? How does that work? Where does his salary come from?
Well, first of all, he did run in a by-election and get elected, so he is in the Legislative Assembly. And the former leader, Christy Clark, she, I think, if I remember right, was getting some additional wages that she wasn't supposed to be. So there's probably some more safeguards that are in place to make sure that they're not getting kind of kickbacks for being leader. But when you are a leader, you should be expected to have a little more money on hand to be able to campaign and to speak, beyond your own constituency and so on. Yeah, for him, I don't know why he left where he was. I would have asked him if he would have talked to me, but he has experience in politics. He knew what he was getting back into. If it didn't work out, he had a job to go back to, and here he was elected. So therefore, now he's the leader of the BC United Party. If he finishes in third place in the next provincial election, there might be calls for him to step down as leader, and then that would, cause maybe him to rethink, or at least sit on the the armchair quarterback sort of spot and think, man, maybe I shouldn't have done this. But, if there's anybody that was probably going to try and preserve what they had, he was the guy to do it. But here they've lost so many people because of what looks like they haven't been very effective as opposition leaders. And, like I said, when they condemned the truckers' convoy and, endorsed the COVID mandates and things like this, some of this wasn't popular either. So, when you're trying to appease the media or, the NDP's constituents, in the long run, that doesn't really help. If those positions were going to help BC, then I think you have a better argument. But I think now when we look in retrospect, those arguments that they were helping people in BC are completely moot. He'd probably come out and just say, look, we shouldn't have done this. I regret it. Here's where we're moving from here. And this is why you can trust us. But, and I'm not an advisor, so who am I to say, right?
I'm pretty sure hell will freeze over sooner than people will admit culpability or guilt.
You're probably right. But that is, old style politics though too, right? Like you have a spin machine for every bad decision that you make. And, we see it in full effect. I mean, when, again, I'm sorry to go back down to the US, but her report said, they're not going to charge Joe Biden for handling classified documents or mishandling them. Because the takeaway for a jury is that he's a well-meaning old man that has a poor memory. Therefore, there's we can't charge him. But yet all these people came out in support of him saying, no, he's sharp as a tack and he's is totally wrong. And I'm like, well, do you think he should be charged if he's not that guy? Like, it's all spin and we all know it, right? So I kind of went on a bit of a tangent there. My apologies, but yeah,
no, it's okay.
They're not going to apologize.
I was going to say, whenever I hear a really big lie, like this little Joseph Goebbels kind of pops up on my shoulder. And, in the beginning, he used to say, if you tell a lie repeated enough times, people will believe it. And then during COVID, it was, if you tell enough lies, you'll bury people under all these lies. And now It's like, if you tell enough conflicting lies, Jeff Sanders will break down and he'll resign.
Well, there's a puzzle that, creates the tapestry of everything that's going on. And of course, like all of us, I have my own opinions, when it comes to politics or social issues and that. But one of the things that I think I was well trained at, 35 years ago in journalism school, which I doubt they're doing very much anymore, is to step back and just try to take a look at, what's really happening. And when you do that, you're able to sort of see even the flaws in the people or the movements or the organizations that you tend to support. You can start to see where some of the breakdowns may be. And then you got a piece here and a piece there. And, you can start putting them together a little bit. Doesn't mean you're right necessarily, but, having the ability to sort of step back and just try to have an overview and then listen to what other people are saying, not just people that reaffirm what you already think, can also help bring this to, down to an understanding. I guess we're so, the Facebook pages and signal groups and everything that people subscribe to now, virtually everybody just has their own groupthink group that, shares the same means or reinforces the same ideas. And, we feel like we're a tribe or a family there. And so we don't even know what other people are saying. And I think I mentioned this to you when we talked before. I covered Drag Queen Storytime in Coquitlam that had, more than 200 people attend, a handful of protesters and a whole bunch of supporters. But when I would ask each side, why is the other side here? Nobody had an idea, which was just telling me, the whole picture is not getting presented. For sure, it's not getting presented by anybody in the media. And further to that, it just told me that, our groups that give us the information on Drag Queen Storytime, you're on one side or the other, and it's all going to be the same storylines and information lines and data and research that's just going to support what we already think. But the funny thing is, in that case there, both sides thought they were there to protect children. So why is there that divide? Just a great example to show that we're so disconnected. And if we can stand back and talk to people, read other people's opinions, we'll be able to see a little more nuance to what the whole story really is. And then that helps us form our opinions. In this case here, I'm just trying to put the pieces together, what tells me happened with the BC Liberal Leadership Convention and eventually how their support has dwindled as much as it has.
Jeff, going back to I think we were talking about incentives, is what I called it. So if you're an MLA, you get a salary. If you're a leader of a party, you'll get a salary or dividends, but you'll definitely get like a fund that you can manage. So I get that. So that's an incentive to remain in the party. But what is the BC United Party? Like, they don't sound conservative. So, like, what do these people stand for? Do they just stand for the money, or do they actually, are they left of center and they're trying to get some right of center voters?
Yeah, no, they were the conservative option in the province, and they still would have things that would fall under that category. For example, Falcon brought up it takes 6 years to build a house in Vancouver, or probably Greater Vancouver, because of all of the regulations, the environmental assessments. It just takes such a long time to get everything approved before you can even, put a shovel in the ground. The traditional conservative approach to building a house is less red tape, less, fees and environmental assessments that just slow the project down. And so this is one of the things he illustrated that they're there to advocate. The problem, again, in my assessment, is you're catering to a crowd, or you're trying to convince people who only, especially BC, we have in my opinion, such a biased media landscape here. There's only one side of a message that gets out there. And if you want to, as Kevin Falcon, to try and amplify their concern about, so let's say, safe supply drugs because he brought that issue up too, how he claims that the safe supply that the government is providing goes to the people who are addicted to drugs. They don't use it. They instead go and buy the street supply, which is more potent. Then they take the safe supply and they sell it or trade it so that those dealers will go into the communities where people aren't addicts but want to experiment, or they're just getting started, or are youth, that type of a thing. It's a social issue that for the most part everybody wouldn't want to see happen, but that message he was trying to relay, at least to his friendly crowd that I was at, we'll get that picture. We'll maybe hear it from somewhere, but most of BC won't hear that. And so how do you straddle that line where you want to illustrate how damaging the, harm reduction approach to crime and addiction is without sounding unsympathetic, which you're fearing is going to be portrayed by your opposition, the NDP, for sure. And then the media will also do that. And so what they'll do, and what BC United has tried to do, is kind of just stay out of the headlines. They haven't done much under Andrew Wilkinson, and only now I think Kevin Falcon's trying to start to, get his name out there. An election, there's rumors there's an election coming up or being announced in a week or two. So if that happens, now's the time you need to get that name recognition. But their politicians are typically afraid, especially the conservative-leaning politicians, to say anything, because a lot of it is going to have their soundbite manipulated so that they sound uncaring or ignorant or something along those lines, or it's just going to be presented in a way that is just unfavorable to the party. And so, like Pierre Poilievre, I think, if I got the messaging right, told his MPs, like, don't talk about the Alberta legislation about the approach to gender surgeries and schools and that. They're asking their people just to kind of keep buttoned up so that they don't say something that's going to cause some damage, because they're afraid of the media. I'm not sure that's the way to go, because you're not getting your message out there if you're not talking. And so this is part of why I think they've been trying to preserve what they had until they realized they lost all this ground to the BC Conservatives. Now it's scramble time to try and make that up. And it's too late, it seems to me, especially if they're going to be soft on the issues that the Conservatives are stronger on, which includes the whole approach to SOGI and parental rights. And, they're, yeah, I think I might have strayed off of your original topic here, or your original question. And I'm regretting that now because I dovetailed into something I might have screwed up there. So what was your question, brother? I think I missed it.
No, I think my original question was incentives, but this is going the right salary, incentive. What are they doing? But you answered it really well. So I have a follow-up question. What do you think of this view that I have, where the Conservatives, so I guess in this case the BC United Party, they fall into a trap where if they open their mouth and they say what they believe in, they get crucified by the media. So they say, all right, you know what? Let's just keep quiet. And then tacitly, the assumption is that once we get in, then we'll do whatever we want. And then the media turns around and is like, we got them, boys. We got them to shut up. And once they get in, we'll get them to shut up even more. When people don't stand on principle, I find things get worse. They don't get better.
Mm-hmm. My wife and I, we talked to one of the other Surrey MLAs that came out to that town hall, and is Eleanor Sturko, and she's a former RCMP officer, and so she's really educated in real time by being on the streets and seeing the effects of addiction and crime and all of that, right? And it was refreshing to talk to her when the cameras were off so that she can be herself and, just use language that wasn't going to get her in trouble and just kind of say, this is what I've seen and this is what I think we should do and this is what I think we will do and that type of thing, right? When the cameras are on, the politician is always afraid of how it's going to be used against them. I saw that Carrie Lake, a woman who was running for governor in Arizona, she started bringing her own camera crew to all of her events. And I'm sure this happened well before this, but this is where it got a little more attention because she was really lambasted. But then she would bring her own footage out and say, this is where you lied. So Drea Humphrey with Rebel News was there. There was a Punjabi radio station crew that was there. And so they had some sit-down interviews. And one of the volunteers or staffers for the BC United Party was there and recording the interview on their own device, which is great. This is what I've been advocating that they should be doing is you got to record when you're having an interview with the press so that if they lie or spin it in something that's not correct, then you can bring out the actual footage and then show this is what really was said or what I really meant because, they clipped the soundbite. But again, you only have so many people to do this job and follow, the 50 different, media outlets in BC and see what they're all saying and stuff like that. So in principle, I think each party probably has their where they're rooted, but it's a lot safer for the NDP and the Green Party to announce their positions without receiving the same type of backlash from how our media will cover them compared to the BC United Party or the BC Conservatives. The BC Conservatives, they don't get a lot of attention, so they can kind of do their own thing and they're basically reaching their own audience largely, I found. But for sure, if John Rustad says something at the Legislative Assembly, I demand you hire our nurses back or something like that, that gets played. BC United, which has a longer standing here in our province and a lot more clout as far as media attention goes, they've been a lot more cautious with how they talk about any of these issues. And after that town hall, I could see that they're still doing that. If they, again, so I guess I'm bringing up my own opinion here, but if your media is not presenting the message that you're trying to convey, it might be partly because you're not doing a good enough job conveying it. But I think in today's, temperature for politics, you're also avoiding media in order to try and protect, your brand that at least your own supporters already know exist. But if you got to bring back some of those voters that you've lost, or, an NDP voter that support or doesn't like the healthcare system right now, for example, how are they going to hear from you? You've got to do something. And, these principled stances have become, hot button, landmines for the BC United Party, it seems. So, once they're elected, if they were elected, then we see this all the time. The agenda that we didn't know existed starts to kind of come out. And that's part of what politics is now. You also campaign by fear mongering and saying that person over there is the boogeyman. Their party is going to destroy democracy, or, whatever buzzwords are going to be used. I guess that motivates a lot of us. But at this point here, we're all in our own camps. And yeah, the BC United Party, I think, is just trying to, like I say, just try and climb a couple of rungs on that ladder so that they can have the status of being opposition. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, that might still happen.
Shifting gears, what's your view on John Rustad? Because I'm not really, I haven't been too, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. The idiot host didn't turn his phone off. Sorry. As I was saying, what's your view on John Rustad? Because I don't follow provincial politics that closely, and everyone I talk to, granted I'm in an echo chamber, but people who are more right of center, they talk of him, speak of him as if he walks on water. So where did he come from, and what are his views, and what are his chances of success?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had the privilege of talking to him a couple of times. He was at an event I spoke at last summer, and so I got to talk to him, outside for a while as well. He was kicked out of the Liberal caucus. He was a Liberal member of the Legislative Assembly for Nechako Lakes, up like in the Vanderhoof area, and his viewpoint on the truckers, COVID, and this very controversial issue that has affected everybody, led him to being removed from caucus. So he ended up becoming an independent. And then when the BC Conservative Party was having their leadership race, he bought a membership and ran for leadership and got elected. And so that was his rise to being the leader of the BC Conservative Party. Since then, there was another Liberal MLA that crossed the floor to join him, Bruce Banman. And so that gave them official opposition or official party status. So now they got some money. They get more time in the Legislative Assembly, more staff. And he, to me, stood on principle instead of what the party felt was crucial, which was kind of maintaining the status quo that polling they thought was saying about COVID, mandates, healthcare, vaccines, all that stuff. For many of us, part of the reason popular non-politicians around the world were getting elected in Europe before over here and Donald Trump got elected is, we're tired of the sort of the political grandstanding. We're seeing what we would argue in a lot of cases, the corruption that kind of comes along with politics. I mean, my saying is you don't get into politics for noble reasons. You get into politics to get rich. I don't think we have to go down that rabbit trail, but, we want typically as an electorate to have a leader, an MLA, an MP, a city council that are there to represent us and take into account the entire landscape of the constituents that they serve and do it honorably. So in his case, while he's got a lot of experience in politics, he was ejected from the Liberal Party for standing up for what he believed and a lot of his constituents as well. So is he going to gain traction from that? Obviously he has, because they're solidly in second place in polling in BC. With that said, they're at a disadvantage, I believe, because they do not have the war chest for advertising and marketing. And, you have a skeleton crew of volunteers to try and recruit people to be candidates for the next election, to help organize fundraising, a whole slew of things that we don't realize goes on. We know it must, but we don't realize. And so you'll have one person handling, 40 different hats, and a lot of things will fall through the cracks. So their party, I don't know for sure, but, there's that threat that they may be, always playing catch up just to be ready for the next election, and then may look disorganized once it's announced. But for most people, he at least came onto the scene in leading the BC Conservative Party for what seemed to be more pure motives than what politics traditionally does. I mean, you get elected, you're under the banner of whatever party that elected you, especially if it's one that has clout. They just say, congratulations, now sit down, shut up, vote the way we tell you, and we'll help you get reelected next time. And if you follow that framework, then you're doing just fine. You're not rocking the boat. Nobody, hears you say or do anything that is going to get you in trouble or the party a bad name. And then you start getting some funding to get reelected for the next election. And at this point, you're making your contacts. You've got, if you lose, you've got a job to go to afterward and stuff like that. So as a person, I mean, he talked about, he had his own approach to this whole land title issue, how we work on it with First Nations. Of course, he's in an area that he represents a lot of people in the Indigenous communities. So he's probably got a little better idea of how, that all falls into place. But again, for almost everything, Payman, it comes down to money. And in politics, I don't know how much they have. They did get a huge boost that was announced, but it was still less than what the Green Party earned in the last quarter. So, they're way behind the 8 ball in that. However, it doesn't mean that they can't come up with some catchy slogans. Maybe there's a scandal that comes out with the BC NDP or something like that. And now all of a sudden people are going to start exploring them. There's a lot of things that can happen. I'm not sure how well they could maybe get into the social media sphere to try and get their messaging out. But this is what they're probably trying to arrange in order to do. It is an uphill climb for sure. And we'll see. But that's about the best assessment I can give for Rustad and his party. So
do you think it's a case, or how much do you think it's, you got these Dianne Feinsteins and Nancy Pelosi's, these geriatric old timers just clinging on, they won't get out, and the younger generation, your age, my age, younger, they're just fed up. They're trying to do a change. What do you call it? A guard change in guard.
Yeah, the landscape's a little bit different in Canada than what we see in America, in my opinion. But you become a career politician. Yeah, I mean, this is why I think the BC Liberal Convention was telling when they had these young, aspiring, BC Liberals that were vying for the leadership, that brought a fresh look to, the traditional ideas that have been outdated. I mean, if you've got advisors that are still from the 80s and 90s telling you how to run your campaign, like, you've lost. And so you get these people who are in their 30s that have some new ideas. And what it looked to me is that, they're rocking the boat too much. Like, we can't risk having one of them lead our party. They've got no experience, and they're too radical with what they're thinking. And, we're going to lose fundraising and donors, etc. It's much better just to kind of keep secure and safe. And and like I said, I brought up a scandal with the NDP, but like, that would seem to be the only strategy that they would have in order to win an election, because they're certainly not out there trying to tell people, like, here's where the NDP is failing you, for example, which is often, your campaign strategy. So, the people, if they have a chance to stay in politics, it's a good paycheck. You build a lot of you build a lot of resources. You know what type of legislation you're going to pass if you want to make investments or, kind of build friendships and stuff like that. It's, but not everybody is there to sort of exploit that. Not everybody is given that opportunity to do that. I don't know if there's much more of a firewall here in Canada comparative to the United States, but, it's not looking good when Trudeau and the Liberals make marijuana legal, and then all of a sudden turns out his wife becomes, a distributor in the cannabis trade here, right? So I don't know how to answer that entirely, but the old guard traditionally wants to keep what they have. And when they have the background with money, donors, name recognition, they can usually pull it off. So the young people like yourself that would want to get into politics, it's an uphill battle in a lot of ways, but it can be done. But you usually have to rely on whoever you're trying to replace making a mistake. So that's what you have to exploit a lot of the time.
Fair enough. Jeff, I wanted to ask you one last question. I guess this is kind of personal for you, pertaining to your faith. If you want to tell us how you came about on that journey, and also how you think faith is going to play into provincial politics in BC.
Well, I mean, I became a Christian when I was 27 years old. And so that was the biggest thing that ever affected my life. And ever since then, I've had to try and, learn that journey. In politics, it's had very little role as far as actual candidates go. People don't really vote. There's some small parties like the Christian Heritage Party, for example, that will not have anybody elected in any election, or they haven't. And some Christians will vote for them. I would say, for the most part, though, in Canada, whether you're in a faith community or not, you're not looking for somebody to say, this is my faith, therefore you should support me. Now, I'm a bit detached from the South Asian community and how that plays, but I used to go for walks. I'd walk my dog, and I would meet up with this woman and her husband. She was recovering from a devastating car accident, and so she would kind of walk. She was very depressed. But she kind of gave me some insight a little bit. So there is a bit of intermingling in that community with, according to her anyways, with faith, religion, and politics. But overall, if you're going to be a candidate and run in for whatever party in whatever election, it might be more of a hindrance to claim that you obey God rather than man. Than to, just try to kind of leave that out of the equation. What ends up happening is if you were even announced that you're a Christian, well, the first thing that anybody in in the media wants to ask you, oh, so then you're going to take away abortion. It always has to come up, right? And so a lot of people muddle over how to deal with some of that type of controversy that they're looking to create. But overall, I would say, it's getting a bit more play right now because of the war between Israel and the Gaza Palestinians, because people are picking sides in that conflict. And you see a lot more people that are sort of professing what their faith is, whether they're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, or other. So if this continues on, that might become an issue when if the media has the courage to say, well, what's your position on the Israel-Gaza conflict? Because that's going to alienate a lot of people depending on your answer. So overall, though, it hasn't played as big of a role. And as far as the population goes, because it never really mattered, or at least in my lifetime that I'm aware of, what religion you ascribe to, people are just going to vote for your party because we don't vote for the individual here in Canada. We vote for the party and what their platform is, right? So, but yeah, I hope that I try to represent Christ in my daily walk, and I'm sure there's lots of people who can give examples where I haven't. But for somebody who's going to be representing God in however that God is manifested in their faith, if they're not credible or honest or demonstrating that when they're a politician, for me, I would love to call them out on it.
I'm going to hit you with a deeply philosophical question, and I asked Leighton Gray this one as well. In the context of, I hope I pronounce it right, unalienable or inalienable rights, or the supremacy of God, what does that word mean to you, God?
Well, God is the creator of the heavens and the earth and everything that has breath and all life on earth. So, I mean, that's my ultimate leader. There was a documentary that I watched. I forget the name of it now here. The Antichrist and His Ruin. But they started off by discussing how Canada was a nation that was founded on godly principles, the Christian God, or the Judeo-Christian God. And the Constitution also, according to them, was founded on that Judeo-Christian approach to life, liberty, and freedom. And I shouldn't say it like that because that's not how it says it in the Constitution. But they were trying to make this illustration that God is a part of the fabric of the founding of Canada. I mean, for me, I'd love to believe that that's how we would approach it because, those values are timeless, and we donate, we help, we look for the people who need to be taken out of things like addiction or abuse, orphans, widows. We're there to take care of them. And now what's happening is our government is trying to replace God, in my opinion, by saying, hey, we, the state, need to be your God. I don't know. I can't speak for other faiths, but in Christianity, once we replace God with the state, like that's a huge problem. And we're influenced by what our social media feed says, by the news that we subscribe to and watch and listen to. I mean, we all get kind of inundated with more and more like government is the solution. This candidate, this party is going to save us. I mean, in America, like both sides, it's the end of democracy if the other side wins, right? Like, but for us here in Canada, I've been watching the erosion of God in government and our culture at such a frightening pace that all I can see is chaos that's going to come at the end of this. I don't know what it'll look like exactly, but for those who do aspire that God is the creator, regardless of your faith, I would argue you need to try and make sure that the people that you elect to represent you also recognize that too.
I grew up in a secular family. There's a whole reason for it, and up until 3 years ago, I was an atheist, and I'm really reevaluating that after COVID. But like I have noticed that the people that resisted the government measures were overwhelmingly people of faith. In my opinion, they were mostly Christian, but it was people of faith. And when I talk to people online now, they're on, on the other end of the spectrum, the left end of the spectrum. It's almost like we're talking a different language. Like I talk about property rights, parental rights, and I say, kids belong to the parents. And they're like, no, without government, you have no rights. Like this is verbatim, they say that. And, they try to justify it. Like, if there is one parent out there that maybe is abusing their child, then we can't have parental rights. Like it's absolute clown world. But I agree with you that there's been this erosion of God, this destruction of God.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for me to build on that, if we keep, there's been an effective messaging in order to try and get people in these faith communities to see politics as something that's more important than our faith. And by politics, I'm also talking just about the social issues that are, surrounding us that are, creating a lot of division as well. There's speculation that this is what makes people stay in power. As long as we're the ones that are doing the fighting, me and you and your ex-followers, if we're all fighting, then, we can ignore what's going on with the people who are making the laws and making our decisions and, changing our lives. If we can get back and start rooting ourselves in God, and recognizing that he's the ultimate one in authority, then our ability to communicate with each other and to make decisions on how we're going to, help our community, what type of job we're going to do, where we donate our time and our money, these things become a lot more clearer and we're able to have a much bigger impact. In politics, I think you've got to abandon God if you want to be involved, because God is a crutch for most of these parties, because largely, and this is me talking again from my own opinion, the media, I was trained to try and hold government to account. So I'm supposed to pay attention to what they do and say and so on. COVID is a great example, Payman, and certainly the rise of Trump, as things just completely eroded in our media. We don't do that. And, the media, which is largely, secular, God is the enemy. So if you're a Christian or a Muslim, well, maybe not quite that territory yet, but there are certain people that will wear their faith more strongly. They're going to have to constantly talk about that faith and how it interferes with the media's definition of what, social justice is, or parental rights, or whatever the issue or the topic is. But if we put God first, and more of us do it, because most of us do think that God exists, and certainly in our multicultural, Canadian landscape, we have a whole spectrum of different faiths that have large majorities. We'll end up having more effect by, putting God first where he belongs. My take anyway.
We went from BC politics to deep philosophy.
Well done.
I guess we're almost at 1 hour now. Jeff, what are your predictions for what's going to happen to the province of BC in the next election?
Next election. Well, I think the budget has to be released like in a week or so. And then our constitutional law in British Columbia, it has to be debated. If they don't want to debate it, then it might be in their advantage if polling is still in their favor, like it is right now, to call an election. So I think this is one of the reasons there might be some rumors that the NDP is might be looking to call an election. I think David Eby's wife is expecting a baby later on, so he doesn't need to be campaigning or worrying about politics during that time. So there's a couple of things that might lead to this being an election call. So if that happens, right now the NDP is completely in the driver's seat. They have money out the yin yang, so they can advertise. They have largely still, a collection of media outlets that would like to see them reelected. BC United will have the second biggest advertising campaign available, but I have a feeling their target's not going to be the NDP. It's going to be the BC Conservatives. And so the Conservatives are going to have to fight a front on both sides where they're going to be trying to illustrate that the NDP is the bad guy for this province, but also staving off the attacks that BC United is going to do. And the United has to do that in order to try and regain second place again, which is all I think they're shooting for. The Greens, I don't want to be disrespectful to them, but they don't have a footprint in this province outside of Victoria, basically. And, they have 2 seats, but, I don't think that they're going to have much of a dent. Of course, the NDP became the party in power because of 3 Greens that aligned with them in order to topple the Christy Clark Liberals. And so they may still have a role to play again if they still get a couple of seats and it's a lot closer election. So that could play out as well. But overall, I would have to say it looks right now to be an NDP majority unless there's some type of scandal or something that really puts the NDP on their heels. And we'll just wait to see if that emerges.
So to the very, very few number of BC residents that still have any assets left, get them out of BC quick. The NDP might win.
I don't know. I mean, it's getting more and more unaffordable. A lot of that comes down to the, city councils. I mean, that's maybe where we would have a little better, place to try and address where at least our housing assets are. But I don't know. There's a whole bunch of people that, they rent, and rent is super unaffordable. And the NDP has put a, big push in changing housing and strata laws in the province. And so that's probably where they're going to try and put most of their focus down. They've fudged the numbers related to what they've done for healthcare. But that is a complete disaster from everything that I can see. So they're going to want to make the spotlight stay away from that. And if the Conservatives and BC United are infighting with each other, the NDP has a good chance to come out unscathed if nothing scandalous, comes out during a campaign. So, and by the way, you're asking, what would happen? Who would be opposition at this point? I have contacts in all 3 major parties. Nobody with the Greens, but I think the Conservatives still have an uphill battle in trying just to get people to know that they're there. And again, people feel the security of, if they're wondering, who do I go, BC United or go BC Conservative? Like, I'm disappointed with BC United and they seem to be losing steam, but they may be the safe vote because I don't want to split. And, I don't know okay, I'll go BC United. Like that for sure is part of what, the fabric of the human nature is as well. So I think it's, I'll say it's 50-50 for second place right now. Slight edge probably to BC United though. for that
Oh man,
reason mainly.
I'm just hoping for a miracle and get the NDP out. But I've learned over the last few years that hope is not a good strategy.
Well, you're starting to reevaluate whether God exists, so maybe you can find something out from there too. So,
Yeah. Next episode, you and I were going to talk about prayer. When the
I'm there for
NDP,
that too.
yeah, we're going to have to pray them out. But sorry, I know you don't like to get political, but Jeff, I guess I just wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom and educating the rest of us that might not have the same understanding of provincial politics.
Oh, I'm glad that you invited me. I don't follow BC news that closely, but I do try to pay attention to at least the parties and just try to evaluate what they're doing so that I can kind of come up with a conclusion that makes some sense. But most of this is just me trying to evaluate by stepping back and taking a look, listening, and trying to paint the picture for what I think is going on. So hopefully, yeah, that helps you and your followers. And I'm happy that you invited me on. So yeah, God bless you, brother. It's good to talk.
Likewise. All right, Jeff, have a great night and goodbye, everybody.
Okay, good night.